r/AskReddit. When someone close to you loses a loved one, what's better to say than, "I'm sorry"? Hundreds of people came to my grandpa's visitation. The "I'm sorry" and "he was a great guy" all ran together after a few hours. Two comments stuck out to me when it was over. Both were from people who told a specific story about him, some way he had touched their lives. Previously unbeknownst to me, I realized the two women who did this had recently lost family members of their own, so I figured they knew from experience what would be most helpful to say. Now when I go to a visitation, I try to come up with a favorite memory of the deceased to share with their loved ones. Bonus points if it's a new story, something the mourners wouldn't have known about. When coming to terms with a death, it's heartening to realize you can still learn new things about the person you've lost. Some people hate this, and it's understandable, but the most comforting thing I was told after losing my dad was, "It's just going to suck for a while." After tolerating mountains of, "I'm so sorry, I know how you feel, God is watching over him now, blah babbity blah etc., I thought I was going to snap all over again. A dear friend held me close and told me, "It's just going to suck for a while. Life will suck for a while, but it's going to pass. Come back, pass, and come back again over and over. It'll never stop entirely hurting." I cried harder than I had since he was diagnosed, but they were tears of relief and release. Her words still comfort me almost 3 years later, but I know for a fact not everyone would appreciate it. I suppose those words are just good if you know your loved one has a disdain for repetitive pleasantries and religious explanations. I was hoping someone would post this. When my brother died unexpectedly at 16, we not only got to deal with rumors there had been an undiagnosed health condition, but a teen dies suddenly, and questions run rampant, but all the traditional, nice sentiments. A dear friend held my hand and said, "This just royally ducking sucks," and it did. Still does. Sometimes saying nothing at all and just sitting near them in silence so that they know they aren't alone is better than saying anything. When my younger brother died in a car accident about 10 years ago, one of our friends camped at my house for a week or more, and I hope he knows how much it meant to me and how much he helped me just by being there. Being alone during that time was the absolute worst. Can confirm, people left me alone when my dad died. It's been a year and I'm still upset people didn't come sit with me. It was awful, and bring food. I didn't have the energy to feed myself properly. The best thing is to listen instead of trying to think of the perfect words to make it better. My best friend lost her dad a few years back. I just said, "I'm not going to say anything because it will sound stupid and pointless," and just sat with her. She agreed and thanked me because people were saying the typical things and it was really starting to irk her. Told her my phone was on and she could call me anytime. Or just simply ask them what they need, even if it's just sweeping their floor or buying groceries. Sadly, at 31, I have lost my mother in 2008, my 2-year-old daughter in 2016, and my sister in 2018. If you're talking about at funerals, family gatherings etc., it doesn't matter too much. It's just a long blurry dreamlike state for a lot of people. They also know that you probably don't know what to say. They don't either. Don't be afraid to bring up good times. It hurts but it's also healing. Don't say, "They're in a better place. You'll meet again. They're always with you." That shit gets old fast. I get why people say it, but nobody is ready for that shit at funerals. All they want is that person back. Save that for another day. Just say it from the heart. More often than not, at the very least, you'll get an E for effort. I know she meant well, I think, but when I lost my dad not even a week later, my sister-in-law phoned me so excited, told me she was going to a psychic. She asked me if I had any questions she wanted me to ask my father, so yes please don't do that lol. We are two strangers on the internet. Regardless of that, I wanted to say I've had a similar experience. All I can say and all I feel I need to say is that I understand. Take care of yourself as best you can. I'm a big believer in feeding the grieving. Losing someone, especially suddenly, is a huge shock to most people, and they find it hard to eat. There's not much to say that will make it better, but acts of service, such as giving them food, cleaning their apartment if they're too depressed, or even just taking their car to refill their gas tank, can help a lot when someone's in that frame of mind. However, I will note this, when I miscarried, a nurse came into the room and said, "I know that nothing I can say will make this better, but I'd like to give you a hug. I have lost many people in my life, and that was the best response to my grief I have ever experienced." Honestly, I believe that usually nurses in general don't get commended enough for the work they do. They have to take care of people who can't take care of themselves. They go through a lot because when someone dies in their care it really hurts, and some of them go the extra mile and do amazing things that they maybe didn't have to do but did it out of kindness. When my parents passed, 12 days apart, I heard all the platitudes to the point I could blow chunks. A high school friend simply said, "I'm sorry," and I found that to be the most impactful thing said to me. Maybe you'll appreciate this. I have a friend I hadn't seen in a bit, and I saw him around town one day. He told me he was due to be a father in about a month. Cut to maybe 3 months later, and I see him again. I ask him, "Hey, you a father now? How's that going?" Quote, he just looks at me stone-faced and says, "Didn't make it. His child had died before it made it." To Thomas, yeah, the face I made must have been something else. Anyways, he starts laughing his ass off. Really belly laughing. For a moment I think that he's ducking with me and the kid is fine. But then he says, "I've seen that face so many times now that it's actually hilarious to me. Funny. What you can take out of the grief." It must be really tough losing both parents with a few days apart. I really hope that you're better now. The son of a family friend was shot and killed at a party just before Christmas many years ago. I told her that I knew damn well that there was no way I could understand what she was going through, so I wouldn't try to offer advice, but I would be there to help with things she needed to get done. Over the following couple days, I drove her around town, such as to and from the police station and to make arrangements for his body. She later told me that that meant more to her than anything anyone else had said to her. She was sick of hearing "I'm so sorry" or platitudes about what a great guy he was, and said that me treating her semi-normally, I wouldn't crack lame jokes to lighten the mood like I normally would, and just being there to help without all the bullshit condolences was what helped her the most those few days. I faced this yesterday. My partner found out his friend he'd known for over 10 years passed unexpectedly. I continued to say, "I'm sorry," but I also scratched and massaged his head, his favorite thing, and mostly stayed quiet. Offer to bring him food. One of the more difficult things to do during the initial stages of mourning is to eat properly. The closer the mourner is to the deceased, the harder that is, because a series of important decisions have to be made in great haste, such as organ donation and funeral arrangements and memorial services. The rest of life doesn't slow down in the meantime. Then there's the will, or the lack of one, and the quest for important documents. There's going through personal belongings and arranging an estate sale. The less organized the deceased was, the more daunting that gets. Wedding rings and rare childhood photos turn up among unopened mail. Long dormant storage lockers contain a pile of garbage with a valuable vintage science fiction collection in the corner. Then, as often as not, there's at least one relative who tries to steal an inheritance, while another is an overgrown child who tries to make the funeral all about themselves. It's exhausting. Tangible assistance is often sorely needed, and home-cooked food is the safest option because it's one of the things that falls by the wayside during that crush. I used to be a part of a smallish women's FB group that had members all over the country. One woman's husband died unexpectedly. She was left with 4 kids and no idea what to do. A couple other group members were experienced in grief management and organized a response from the group. We took turns ordering meal deliveries, household staples delivery, house cleaning service, stuff to keep the smaller children occupied, etc. When she was ready, able to talk about it, she mentioned that the deliveries of necessities were a lifesaver because who cares about buying toilet paper when you're grappling with a severe loss? I never would have thought of that, so I'm glad I learned from those women. Everybody is going to say to them, "Let me know what I can do for you." But the person will never ask for anything. Instead, make some suggestions. Say things like, "I'd like to bring over some food. Is there anything you are allergic to?" Quote, "I know a great house cleaning service that owes me a favor. What would be a good time for them to come by? You could use some me time. When you're ready, here's a pass for a mani, pedi and spa." this. The grieving person probably has no idea what they want or what they need, and it's just one more decision to make when you are already overwhelmed. It's so much better to offer something concrete like food, babysitting if the bereaved has children, a coffee date, etc. Then the only decision the person has to make is, do I want this thing now? Quote, and don't be offended if they say no, or not right now. Everyone needs something different at different times. I would also add that grief lasts a long-ass time, so don't forget about the person a few months after the loss. Grief often hits hard a few months later, and that's about when everybody else forgets about it and moves on. My grief was worst about a year after my mother died, but by then everyone kind of thought I should be over it, and it made the process that much more lonely. Best comment: nobody will ask for help. Just help. Just do the things you can do to help. One of my friends lost her dad a year ago. I lost mine 3 years ago. I went up to her and just hugged her, giving her a note. The note said, "You are allowed to be sad for as long as you need. Just remember to not be sad forever. Your dad would love to see you smile and be happy." She still has that note and it's pinned to her desk. I miss them too. Grief is often about feeling left and lost, and simply having someone else express a similar feeling is comforting. At my mother's funeral, my best friend asked how I was doing and I replied with, "I'm fine," to which he laughed in my face and said, "No, you're not, but I miss her too." It was one of the most touching and comforting moments. It's okay not to be okay, and take as long as you need to grieve. Don't let anyone tell you that you should stop grieving because it's been X amount of time. These are things I wish people, and especially my family, would have told me when my grandmother passed. Instead, I was forced to move on and I never got to grieve properly. Now I'm an adult who is all ducked up. A friend who had lost her dad texted me when she heard my brother died. She just told me, "There's no wrong way to grieve, so whatever you're feeling or doing right now, it's okay. It's totally normal." It's been 5 years and I am still grateful for this message, and I find it so helpful because grief is a relentless bastard and you never know when it's gonna hit you again. I say this to people who are going through tough times. There's such social pressure to put on a brave face, or get on with things, or not burden other people with your problems. That it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel shitty. In grief, we shouldn't feel pressure to act a certain way just so that others don't feel bad for us. My friend lost her baby at 22 weeks pregnant a few months ago. Her husband and family are all telling her she needs to move on, but she's still grieving hard. I'm the only one in her life affirming her feelings whilst encouraging her to keep doing counseling too. Lost my brother to alcoholism and homelessness on the 20th. He was 36. I told some people, but not many. I'm not emotionally able to talk about the circumstances and backstory. It's just tragic and killed the mood in an instant, especially mine. What I found is that many people try to fill the awkward silence by interpreting something off the few things they know, and it's very often hurtful, though well-meaning. He definitely didn't live freely. Even worse is, so did you expect it in some way then? Quote, I'm then put into a situation in which I have to correct them or answer to them, and I'm not yet able to. If you know someone who deals with something similar, offer your condolences and let them speak if they want to. And if not, offer your help or an open ear if they decide otherwise. They might get back to you once they know how to put their grief into words. What I learned from my mother, Julia Kasdorf. I learned from my mother how to love the living, to have plenty of vases on hand, in case you have to rush to the hospital, with peonies cut from the lawn, black ants still stuck to the buds. I learned to save jars, large enough to hold fruit salad for a whole, grieving household, to cube home canned pears and peaches, to slice through maroon grape skins, and flick out the sexual seeds with a knife point. I learned to attend viewings even if I didn't know the deceased, to press the moist hands of the living, to look in their eyes and offer sympathy, as though I understood loss even then. I learned that whatever we say means nothing. What anyone will remember is that we came. I learned to believe I had the power to ease awful pains materially like an angel, like a doctor. I learned to create from another's suffering my own usefulness. And once you know how to do this, you can never refuse. To every house you enter, you must offer healing, a chocolate cake you baked yourself, the blessing of your voice, your chaste touch. feral yell and a bear hug. When I lost my husband, the last thing I wanted or needed to hear was, "I'm so sorry for your loss." Duck your sorry. I'm too angry. Hence feral yell. Bear hug 'cause I needed a fucking hug. My dad was ill, and we knew he was going to pass. When he did, it was very sad but very peaceful. The family drove back to my parents' house together. I got into my car alone, drove in silence to the empty parking lot of my old high school, and screamed in my car for a few hours. I was so depleted and angry. It was so cathartic.